Al Capone, also known as Scarface, remains one of the most infamous gangsters in American history. Rising to power during Prohibition, Capone built a massive empire in Chicago that thrived on illegal alcohol, gambling, and protection rackets. His operations raked in millions of dollars each year, making him both feared and untouchable in the underworld. Despite his violent empire, Capone worked hard to craft a Robin Hood-like image. He opened soup kitchens and handed out money to the poor, which earned him some public sympathy. Yet, behind that facade, his reign was marked by ruthless murders and violent turf wars. The 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where 7 men from a rival gang were gunned down, cemented his reputation as a cold-blooded kingpin. Law enforcement struggled to bring him down. Local police and politicians were often on his payroll, and witnesses were too afraid to testify. Eventually, the federal government found his weakness: taxes. In 1931, Capone was convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. He would never regain his empire after his release. Capone's story reveals how organized crime can both terrify and captivate society. His name has become shorthand for the golden age of the American gangster, a symbol of power, corruption, and the thin line between myth and reality. Charles "Lucky" Luciano wasn't just another gangster, he was the man who redefined organized crime. Born in Sicily and raised in New York, Luciano climbed through the ranks of the Italian-American underworld with a blend of cunning, brutality, and vision. He recognized that constant gang wars were bad for business and pushed for a new system. In 1931, Luciano helped form the Commission, a governing body of the mafia designed to settle disputes and oversee operations nationwide. This structure brought stability to organized crime, turning it into a sophisticated empire that reached into unions, businesses, and even Hollywood. His reforms effectively created the modern American mafia. Luciano was also pragmatic. During World War II, he allegedly struck a deal with the US government, offering mafia cooperation to protect New York docks from sabotage. In return, his prison sentence was reduced, and he was eventually deported to Italy. Even in exile, he remained influential in international drug trafficking. Luciano's legacy is not just about violence, it's about organization. He transformed chaos into an enduring system, making him one of the most pivotal figures in criminal history. Without him, the mafia might never have become the powerhouse it did. Benjamin Siegel was more than just a mobster. He was a visionary who changed the face of American entertainment. Born in Brooklyn to immigrant parents, Siegel got his start as a hitman and racketeer, but his real claim to fame was his role in transforming the Nevada desert into the glittering empire of Las Vegas. In the 1940s, Siegel spearheaded the construction of the Flamingo Hotel, the first luxury casino on the Strip. He envisioned Vegas as a glamorous escape, mixing high-end entertainment with organized crime profits. Despite his ambition, Siegel's reckless spending angered his mafia backers. The Flamingo project went tens of millions over budget, and whispers of skimming only worsened tensions. On June 20th, 1947, Siegel was shot dead in his girlfriend's Beverly Hills home, his body riddled with bullets in a classic mob hit. Bugsy Siegel's life was short, but his impact was enormous. His blend of crime and showbiz gave rise to Las Vegas as we know it today, a city where glitz, gambling, and shadowy dealings merged into legend. Ellsworth Raymond "Bumpy" Johnson was more than just a gangster. He was a kingpin who ruled Harlem with both fear and respect. Born in South Carolina in 1905, he moved to New York as a teenager and quickly got involved in crime. His intelligence and ruthless ambition caught the eye of larger mob networks, especially the Italian mafia, who saw him as an indispensable ally in controlling Harlem's lucrative rackets. Bumpy built his empire on gambling, drug trafficking, and extortion. But what made him different was his relationship with Harlem's community. To many, he was a protector who provided jobs, financial help, and even defended black-owned businesses from exploitation. His mix of violence and generosity turned him into a legend, with residents calling him the Harlem Godfather. But his criminal life also carried risks. He was arrested multiple times, serving years in prison on drug charges. Even behind bars, Bumpy maintained influence, proving just how deep his power ran. Upon release, he seamlessly returned to his role, holding Harlem in his grip. When Johnson died of a heart attack in 1968, thousands attended his funeral. To Harlem, he wasn't just another gangster, He was a symbol of survival in a city that often overlooked its black residents. Sam DeStefano was one of the most feared and most unpredictable gangsters to ever walk the streets of Chicago. Born in 1909 to Italian immigrants, DeStefano's criminal career began with petty theft and quickly escalated to extortion, loan sharking, and brutal violence. But what truly set him apart was his sheer sadism. Nicknamed Mad Sam, DeStefano thrived on torture and intimidation. Victims of his loan-sharking empire who failed to pay often faced unimaginable horrors. He was known to use drills, ice picks, and even fire on those who crossed him. His violent theatrics terrified the community and cemented his reputation as one of the most dangerous figures in organized crime. Despite his brutality, DeStefano was closely connected to the Chicago outfit, working alongside infamous mobsters like Tony Accardo and Sam Giancana. However, even his own allies feared him. His erratic behavior and violent outbursts made him unpredictable, a liability in the world of organized crime. In 1973, DeStefano's reign of terror ended when he was shot dead in his own garage. His death, likely ordered by the very mob he once served, was seen as justice for the countless lives he destroyed. In the Netherlands, Willem Hollander rose to infamy not through drugs or rackets, but through one of the most notorious kidnappings in history. Born in Amsterdam in 1958, Hollander became infamous in 1983 when he and his associates kidnapped brewing magnate Freddie Heineken, demanding a massive ransom. The group successfully held Heineken and his driver hostage for 3 weeks before police rescued them. The ransom money, around $11 million, became one of the largest ever paid at the time. Hollander was arrested and served prison time, but the Heineken kidnapping cemented his place as one of Europe's most notorious criminals. After his release, Hollander continued to operate in the underworld, becoming deeply involved in drug trafficking, extortion, and violent crime. His name became synonymous with fear in Amsterdam, and even his former associates accused him of betrayal and murder. In 2019, Hollander was convicted of ordering multiple assassinations, earning him a life sentence. To this day, his legacy stands as one of Europe's darkest examples of how crime can evolve from a single shocking act into a lifetime of violence. Freddie Foreman, often called the godfather of British crime, was a key figure in London's underworld during the 1960s and 70s. He was deeply tied to the infamous Kray twins, serving as both enforcer and strategist for their operations. Foreman's cool demeanor earned him respect, and his name carried weight across the criminal world of Britain. Foreman was linked to numerous heists, including the famous 1963 Great Train Robbery, which netted millions. Although he denied involvement, whispers about his role followed him for decades. His reputation grew darker when he admitted in later years to disposing of bodies for the Krays, including 2 men considered threats to their empire. Despite his brutal life, Foreman was never seen as reckless. He ran his operations with discipline, preferring order over chaos. To many, he represented the archetype of a calculating gangster who avoided unnecessary attention. Even so, his name became synonymous with ruthless efficiency. In old age, Foreman embraced notoriety, appearing in documentaries and interviews to recount his life. His candid stories blurred the lines between fact and myth, cementing his place as one of Britain's most infamous mobsters. Michael "Mickey" Cohen was a gangster who thrived in Los Angeles, blending organized crime with Hollywood glamour. Born in Brooklyn in 1913, Cohen first made a name for himself as a boxer before drifting into the criminal world. His ties to Chicago mob boss Bugsy Siegel gave him the foundation to dominate Los Angeles. Cohen controlled illegal gambling, extortion rackets, and drug trafficking in Southern California during the 1940s and 50s. His empire stretched into Hollywood, where stars and moguls often found themselves mingling with mobsters. Cohen's flashy lifestyle made headlines. He wore tailored suits, drove luxury cars, and flaunted his power in public. Violence was never far behind. Cohen survived numerous assassination attempts, including machine gun ambushes and car bombings. These attacks only enhanced his reputation as untouchable, a gangster who thrived in the spotlight rather than the shadows. The police hounded him, but he always seemed to find a way out. Eventually, tax evasion charges brought him down, a fate shared by many of his underworld peers. Still, Cohen's legacy remains tied to the bizarre intersection of organized crime and Hollywood celebrity culture. Dawood Ibrahim rose from the streets of Mumbai to become one of the world's most powerful and feared gangsters. Born in 1955, Ibrahim founded the D Company crime syndicate, which dominated organized crime across India and beyond. His empire stretched into extortion, smuggling, drug trafficking, and even international terrorism. In the 1980s and 90s, Ibrahim's name became linked to Bollywood, where his influence touched stars, producers, and financiers. But his reputation took a darker turn after the 1993 Mumbai bombings, a series of coordinated explosions that killed more than 250 people. Authorities accused Ibrahim of orchestrating the attacks, making him India's most wanted criminal. Ibrahim's reach extended across continents. Reports tied him to money laundering, global drug cartels, and connections with terrorist networks like Al-Qaeda. Despite being one of the most hunted men in the world, he has managed to evade capture for decades. His story highlights how modern organized crime no longer stays confined to one city or one country. Dawood Ibrahim became a symbol of how gangsters could operate on a truly global scale, mixing criminal networks with politics and terrorism. Pablo Escobar's name is synonymous with power, fear, and unimaginable wealth. Born in Rio Negro, Colombia, in 1949, Escobar began with petty theft and smuggling before climbing into the world of narcotics. By the 1980s, he had transformed himself into the most notorious drug lord in history, heading the Medellin cartel, which at its peak controlled nearly 80% of the global cocaine trade. His empire generated billions of dollars each year, flooding the streets of America and Europe with narcotics and fueling addiction on a massive scale. Escobar employed a strategy summed up in the phrase, plata o plomo, silver or lead. Public officials, judges, and law enforcement were forced to choose between taking his bribes or facing assassination. His cartel's violence claimed thousands of lives, and its reach extended into terror attacks, including the 1989 bombing of Avianca Flight 203, which killed over 100 innocent passengers. Political candidates, police officers, and even presidential hopefuls became targets in his campaign to avoid extradition and secure dominance. Yet Escobar presented himself as more than just a criminal. He poured money into housing projects for the poor, built soccer fields, and donated to charities, which earned him a Robin Hood-like image among Colombia's impoverished communities. Forbes magazine even ranked him among the world's richest men. By the early 1990s, Escobar's empire began to crumble under international pressure and relentless pursuit by Colombian forces backed by the United States. His luxurious hideouts turned into prisons of paranoia as allies betrayed him and rivals circled. In December 1993, his reign ended in a rooftop shootout in Medellin, where he was gunned down by Colombian security forces. His death closed a bloody chapter, but his story remains a stark reminder of how greed and unchecked violence can engulf entire nations. Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo, rose from poverty in rural Mexico to become one of the most feared and elusive drug lords of all time. Leading the Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo oversaw a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that smuggled massive quantities of drugs into the United States. His cartel became one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. El Chapo was notorious not only for his brutality, but also for his uncanny ability to escape justice. He first escaped from prison in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart. Captured in 2014, he escaped again in 2015 through a mile-long tunnel dug beneath his cell, complete with ventilation and lighting. These daring escapes only heightened his legend. The Sinaloa cartel engaged in brutal turf wars, responsible for countless murders across Mexico. Entire communities were terrorized, and corruption reached deep into law enforcement and politics. In 2016, El Chapo was captured for the final time. Extradited to the United States, he was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to life in prison in 2019. His story underscores both the ingenuity and the savagery of the modern drug trade. Griselda Blanco, known as the Black Widow or the Cocaine Godmother, was one of the most ruthless figures in the history of organized crime. Born in Cartagena, Colombia, she built her empire in Miami during the 1970s and 1980s at the height of the cocaine boom. Her operations laid the foundation for Miami's reputation as the drug capital of America. Blanco was infamous for her cruelty. She reportedly ordered the murders of rivals, associates, and even family members. Her preferred method of execution, drive-by shootings from motorcycles, became a hallmark of Miami's violent drug wars. Authorities estimate she was responsible for hundreds of deaths. Despite her violent reign, Blanco also pioneered new smuggling methods. She used women, children, and even specially designed clothing to transport cocaine across borders. Her ability to innovate made her both feared and admired within criminal circles. After years on the run, Blanco was arrested in 1985 and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. She was released in 2004 but remained a marked figure. In 2012, she was assassinated in Medellin, fittingly killed by motorcycle gunmen, the very tactic she had introduced. Her story illustrates how the drug trade often devours even its most powerful leaders. Du Yuesheng, often called Big-Eared Du, rose from poverty in rural China to dominate Shanghai's underworld during the early 20th century. Born in 1888, he moved to the city as a teenager, where he initially worked odd jobs before joining the notorious Green Gang. Through cunning alliances and ruthless ambition, Du became the gang's most powerful leader. Under his reign, Shanghai was transformed into a city of vice and wealth. Du controlled opium trafficking, gambling dens, and prostitution rackets, generating immense profits. His connections extended far beyond the underworld. He cultivated ties with business elites, politicians, and even Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Party. These relationships allowed him to operate with near impunity, turning him into a figure both feared and respected. Du's influence wasn't limited to crime. He became a symbol of Shanghai's dual nature, modern and cosmopolitan on the surface, yet controlled by shadowy networks behind the scenes. To the poor, he sometimes appeared as a benefactor, donating to charities and funding schools. To rivals, however, he was merciless, ensuring loyalty through fear and violence. When the Communists rose to power in 1949, Du fled to Hong Kong and later to Taiwan, where he lived until his death in 1951. His life remains a testament to how crime, politics, and business intertwined in shaping modern China. Bindi Johал's name is etched into Canadian crime history as one of the most volatile and violent figures of the 1990s. Born in India in 1971 and raised in Vancouver, Johal grew up amid racial tensions and economic challenges. By his teenage years, he had already gravitated toward gang life, seeking power and respect in a city where organized crime was rapidly expanding. By his 20s, Johal had become a dominant force in Vancouver's underworld. He led a crew that dealt heavily in drug trafficking and contract killings, often clashing with rival gangs in brutal turf wars. Unlike many gang leaders, Johal relished the spotlight. He was flamboyant, openly taunting police and enemies alike, appearing in nightclubs surrounded by luxury cars, women, and bodyguards. Johal's ruthlessness was legendary. Associates who betrayed him rarely survived, and his crew's violence left a lasting mark on Vancouver's gangland scene. His reign was cut short in December 1998 when he was shot dead in a Vancouver nightclub. His murder marked the end of an era, but left behind a violent legacy that reshaped organized crime in Canada. To this day, Bindi Johal is remembered as both a cautionary tale and a symbol of Vancouver's gang wars. James Whitey Bulger became one of the most notorious gangsters in American history, ruling Boston's underworld for decades. Born in 1929, Bulger grew up in South Boston and quickly gained a reputation as a street tough. He climbed the ranks of organized crime, eventually leading the Winter Hill Gang. Bulger was ruthless in eliminating rivals. Extortion, loan sharking, and drug trafficking were just part of his operation. But what made his story even more shocking was his secret role as an FBI informant. For years, he fed the Bureau information on rival gangs, while the FBI turned a blind eye to his own bloody empire. In the 1970s and 1980s, Bulger consolidated power through fear. He was linked to at least 19 murders, often carried out in chilling fashion. His grip on Boston became legendary, and his ability to evade justice fueled his reputation. In 1994, tipped off about an impending indictment, he vanished. For 16 years, Bulger was one of America's most wanted fugitives. He was finally captured in 2011 in California, living under a false identity with his longtime girlfriend. In 2013, he was convicted on multiple counts of murder, extortion, and racketeering, and sentenced to life in prison. In 2018, Bulger was brutally murdered in prison by fellow inmates, ending one of the most infamous gangster careers in U.S. history. His legacy remains one of betrayal, violence, and corruption at the highest levels of law enforcement. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you learned something new, make sure to leave a like and comment down below your thoughts on any of these cases. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more deep dives into history's darkest figures. Your support helps us keep bringing more stories from the world's most chilling corners into the light.